Welcome back, friends. Welcome back, viewers on SSTP. This has this is something that has been unprecedented. We have not had this in the past, and there seems to be some gremlins in the network. There seems to be some things happening, but we shall persevere. And let me just say that whatever happens, this interview with Aman Ravindra-Singh will definitely go on. Are we also on YouTube at this juncture? Thank you. So, on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, welcome to Sashi Singh's Talking Point, episode 34. And to our viewers on Facebook, I apologize for any inconvenience caused to you this morning. I know this has been a highly anticipated program that people have been waiting. And Shahnaz Sahu Khan telling me to get a better firewall. Shahnaz, I know things that needs to be done. It's not a matter of a firewall, Shahnaz. There's something far more greater than that. But thanks for your advice anyway. I appreciate that. All right. Well, let's see. For the third time, let's get Aman Ravinder Singh back online and let us move on. Aman, I do apologize again. Now, when we got cut off, there's a lot of noise coming from your end as well. You mentioned that in 2014, I think the FEA power lines to your house were cut off. Please continue from there. Go through 2014, and then I'll ask you about 2015, 16, etc.
Thank you. I hope I'm loud and clear again.
Yes, you are.
Well, I find it ironic that we keep losing connection. Uh, I'll continue. With regards to 2014, I had mentioned that my home had lost power one particular night, and after calling an FEA, we discovered that my power board had been destroyed, pretty much. And I'm talking about wires being cut from the power board, main switchboard. So that obviously did not just happen, or the power didn't play up or trip up, but there was obviously uh, a proper organized effort made. So I saw that as possibly a preparation for a home invasion. Luckily, I had good support, and we pretty much camped at home for the night. I had got my family put into one room, and we were prepared for the worst. But that was one particular incident that I will not forget.
All right. And moving on, what about 2015? Were there any things that happened to you in 2015?
Yes, as I outline these incidents of harassment and intimidation, surveillance, and being monitored by the authorities, I just want to make a point that I'm not specifically talking about everything. One, there were many more incidents, but also I'm just talking about incidents which I highlight each year, as I've stated. One of the things that happened in 2015, which I will not forget, which is very vivid in my mind, was when I was attacked personally in about September of 2015 in Lotoka City. It was night, and I was walking. I did not see this coming, and all of a sudden, all I remember was being hit at the back of my head, and I went straight down and crashed on the ground. And I was kicked. It all happened very quickly. I was kicked repeatedly, and sworn at, and basically said, "Do not f with the government, and this is what you get for effing with the government. As I said, it was so fast, and as I was hit, I thought that I was being robbed and that this was a robbery. But no one went for my pockets, no one went for my watch, no one went for my shoes, as is usual in a robbery in Fiji. And the only thing I remember was two men running past me, and they were dressed. They were dressed well. They were dressed well: shoes, long pants, pretty much jackets. And anyone from back home would know that these were no ordinary criminals who had confronted me. But that is one incident which sticks in my mind very vividly and continues to do so till this day. That was in about September. In November, I flew out of Fiji to New Zealand to present a paper at a conference on the use of torture by military, police, and prisons authorities in Fiji. And on the day I flew out, 21st November, on that very night, my staff member from the law firm was abducted from Matintari in Nambi and taken in a vehicle and tortured for about 2 hours. He was beaten. He had needles pricked to his hands and arms. He was repeatedly asked about my whereabouts. He was asked about my movement. He was asked other personal questions about me, and this went on for about 2 hours at the back in the back of a minivan. And my staff member made it very clear these were well-spoken men, well dressed, faces were covered, and this was no ordinary work of local criminals. Why would they even take my stuff and do such things? On the same night, my son's mother was returning from work at about 10:30. There was a vehicle waiting. She did not realize anything. She was grabbed from the back, punched on the head at least 3 times, and then held from the back and asked to provide entry into my home. And this was really a touch and go moment. Luckily for me at that time, because I had already been aware of things happening against me. I had 7 guard dogs at that time, and they were very sharp and very switched on. They picked up something, and they all ran towards the main driveway at home, which is the only driveway for vehicles to enter. And it was all thanks to my guard dogs at home that my son's mother was able to run off and save herself from any further brutality and beatings. Um, and this was again very, very sad. When she tried
Aman,
to, sorry, yes,
sorry, continue, continue.
when she tried to leave for Australia for medical treatment, she was blocked at the airport. Uh, these are things unheard of. But that was it. She could not make the trip. We suspected possible brain damage or something because she was hit repeatedly on the head and no other part of the body. But this was in 2015.
All right, if I can just backtrack, some shocking revelations you've just made. In relation to that staff abduction and torture, as you say, did your staff tell you where he was taken, for instance?
He was in Matintar, Nambi, in a car park when this had happened, and he once he was abducted and pulled into the back of the vehicle, he was not really able to see or even understand where he was. He said it was a short trip, but he really couldn't determine the time. Look, this is nothing new. I spoke out about this in 2015, as soon as I returned from New Zealand, and there was a huge outcry then. I gave interviews. This is all a matter of public record. It's all available on Google. You can search for it. Aman Ravindra-Singh, human rights abuses. Aman Ravindra-Singh under attack. Aman Ravindra-Singh in fear. It's all there. So it's not something which I've just brought about today, but I have been speaking about it publicly.
This abduction of your staff member, that's also been covered in the Fiji media and is available if people Google, I believe, Aman Ravindra-Singh abduction of staff, correct?
Yes, it is available.
Now, many viewers may be distressed to hear what you've just revealed about your son's mother being badly beaten in 2015 and the planned abduction of her. Um, that would have sent fears down your spine. How did you react to such an attack?
Well, it's really bad. It's really bad, and to be put in that position and to know that people around you are being attacked because of your work. It's mixed emotions. It's very sickening. It's disgusting. But this is where our country has spiraled towards more anarchy and thuggery, and this is how things are. Very disgusting. Very sad. I must add that people around me had been getting hurt because of my work, my human rights work, my
Those
because of my commitment to democracy.
those two attacks in 2015. What do you think was the trigger for these attacks? What were you up to at that time, either politically or otherwise, that may have inspired someone or triggered these attacks?
I recall 2015 being a very hectic year in terms of human rights abuses, and in July, 16 chiefs from Ra had gotten charged for sedition. In August, 16 chiefs from Nandronga had been charged for sedition. Between June, July, and August, 45 men and one lady had been charged from the West, predominantly from Navindeli, Rambulu, Tabua area. And they were all charged for inciting political violence, sedition. These are all serious charges. And this had happened on national television for about 3-4 months. But at this time, I was very vocal because the rights of my clients had been violated repeatedly, and I was basically the one man standing in the defense of all these women and men during that period. It was a difficult period, very difficult period, a very hostile environment. People would be charged and taken, and we would rush to bar court. By the time we would reach bar court, people would have been remanded. The authorities were playing cat and mouse with us. People were kept for long periods of time in the defiance of the provisions of the Constitution, the 2013 Constitution. Blatant human rights violations across the board. And I had been very vocal during this period, and I had been warned. Interestingly enough, after last week, I did more research on my computer, on emails and things. And in fact, the first death threats against me was from 2015, which I picked up. So that's what it was. That's how it was. That was a reality on the ground. So I attribute all that was happening in September when I was directly attacked, and uh, November when people around me were attacked. I attribute it directly to the sedition cases at that time.
All right. And did you ever complain to the police about these attacks? And if so, did anything happen?
Yes, I did complain to the police, and there are a series of complaints I've made to the police over different incidents that I have suffered or people around me have suffered. As always, complaints taken, but no result. I've
All
never
right. So
gotten.
that was in 2015. What happened in 2016? Were there any forms of attacks or intimidation that you faced in 2016?
The threats and intimidations continued. My office was under surveillance. I was informed about this from a few persons, including someone from the special branch. I was informed about this from a unanimous email. I remember Easter Sunday. I went to work. I thought I'll go to work, and in the peace and calm of the day, I would be able to complete a lot of outstanding work. But as I got close to my office main door, I found that I did not need to use the key. The office was the entire glass door was smashed, and one glance into into my office reception area was hugely alarming. The entire office had been trashed.
Let me put a photograph on the screen. This is the photo you're talking about. This is the incident.
Yes, I'm sitting at the reception area. That's the main glass, and you can see the law firm name towards the bottom right hand. And yes, that is my law firm.
All right. So this was the time your office was smashed. I think we've got another second photograph to put on the screen as well. How do you describe this photograph?
That is my office. And as you can see, furniture broken, files all over the place, ripped, shredded, torn. And yes, that was actually my office, but the entire office was in the same state.
All right. So this is in 2016. Um, any other attacks or intimidation in 2016?
Yes, my law firm was broken into two more times in the same year. It comes to a point I almost lose count. And on the second occasion, it was trashed again. And on the third occasion, the mode was slightly different. I lost my laptop once again in 2016.
Okay. And anything else in 2016?
I recall also the long weekend and
Which long weekend is that?
the Fiji Day long weekend. And the holiday was on the 10th, which is Fiji Day. And I came under attack. My home, in fact, came under attack on the 9th, the one day before Fiji Day. My home was under siege. The house was, the perimeters of my house would have been probably surrounded by at least 6 to 8 persons. Hard to determine. Windows were smashed, and windows around my home were smashed, and that was the siege. It was a very difficult moment. My friends couldn't even get through to assist me while they attempted to, but it was very, very difficult. And I had to put my family into one particular room, barricade the door, and pretty much wait for the next event. And yes, that was a difficult moment.
And how long did that siege last?
The windows were smashed at about 11 p.m. and this lasted for until about 2:30 a.m.
All right. Very, very harrowing stuff.
I
And
must add, I must add, it was thanks to my guard dogs that I think they were not able to breach the perimeter, and that is what I believe saved me on that particular night and my family.
what about police reports on this occasion? You've mentioned office broken into three times. police called on all occasions?
Yes, yes. I followed the channels, but again, as we mostly know, that home invasions and home attacks barely go detected. But on this occasion, again, it was no ordinary attack, as far as I'm concerned. I don't see any house coming under threat of a home invasion where people wait around for at least 3 to 4 hours to try to breach the perimeter of your home to enter your house. I've not
All
heard of
right.
that.
And you mentioned that your laptop was stolen, this time from the office. What is it about the interest in the laptop?
I think overall, I've had at least three laptops stolen, and the way I look at it, it's not just stealing my laptop, but obviously what is contained in the laptop. It could be information which others could use, possibly use against me, use against my clients, or just private information we as lawyers keep. We do a lot of work. Everything is confidential, and that's the sad part about the event.
All right. Now, move on to 2017. Last week, you mentioned that a couple of things happened in 2017. Maybe you can take it up from here. What happened in 2017?
In 2017, the one incident that again is very vivid in my mind is the poisoning of over a period of 1 week of four of my guard dogs. And this, again, as I've mentioned last week, was something which is very sad and shocking that people would go to this extent. Again, on this occasion, there was no public poisoning campaign by the city council. And we know when there is a public campaign by the city council, there is always ads up, and the entire neighborhood is aware of such campaigns. And I know when being a animal lover and a dog person, I know when a dog has been poisoned. And on this occasion, over a period of 1 week, four of my guard dogs died, and they all had burns around the mouth. That is obviously chemicals, and again, very shocking, very sad. And this is what occurred in 2017. The worst part is that they were just not guard dogs, but they were part of the family. And all these dogs were born at home. They were all
Mhm.
born at home and raised by us at home. Holding a pup 1 hour old or half an hour old, from that point till their demise. Very sad, very shocking that this is what was going on.
Aman, after you lost your dogs, those four guard dogs, did you think that there was someone or somebody trying to send a message to you? And if so, what was that message supposed to be?
I think it's clear that whatever I was doing in terms of human rights work, in terms of campaigning for democracy and justice and the rule of law, one thing I knew for certain was that I was stepping on big toes, and I was obviously I had become a thorn on the side of the regime, and the tune I was singing was the same, and definitely it would be in my best interest to shut up, stop, and close shop. That's what it was. The message is clear. The saddest part for me was that these are things we read about, we hear about in far away countries and land, but this was happening in our own little paradise, Fiji, the country that we love, the country that I am very patriotic towards, the land of my birth.
Aman, many people would be asking, why did you not leave in 2016? or even 2017, you could have left Fiji.
Yes, definitely, I could have left Fiji. I'm someone who has traveled widely. I have not had issues with travel or obtaining visas. Traveling is one of my passions. I've been to many, many countries. Yes, I could have left, but that is not in my DNA to just close shop and leave. Um, it's Father's Day today. In the words of my dear father, you know, I was taught to face tyranny. I was faced to take on bullies. I was taught, not to give in, and this was this was the right decision. And it came down to how I was brought up, to be committed to my country, passionate about my country, and believing that we could get things right for a better future for our future generations. I think what we must ask is, if we remain silent, then nothing will happen, and the future generation will inherit the same mess that we are living through today. It was my sense of patriotism and my commitment to democracy, human rights, and justice.
All right. On that note, you mentioned your father, our father, and on this Father's Day, um, spare a thought for him, and may he find eternal peace. Aman, you led the Fiji Labour Party to elections in 2018 during the absence of Mr. Mahendra Chaudhry. Now, did you experience any forms of harassment, intimidation, or threats during that election period?
Yes, as I had mentioned earlier, the the threats, intimidation, has continued, and it continues, and even during the election period, building up to the months before election was announced, we were out on the campaign trail, in Vanuatu, in Viti Levu. That's one of the beauty parts about campaigning. You get to go, which I enjoy. You get to go around the country, and especially to places you've never been, and meeting people on the ground. But the one constant theme that we would always visit during our debriefs with campaign staff, usually at nightly intervals or weekly intervals from different parts, was the ongoing harassment and intimidation and threats that we continue to face. I remember members of Special Branch appearing at every meeting that we would attend. Uh, we were informed afterwards, sometimes even before, that police and military were already in the area, visiting homes, asking people about the meeting which was scheduled. And that alone would stop people from coming forward to even attend the meeting. And people would tell us later on, even after meetings in certain areas, people would tell us later on that members of the police and military had visited them afterwards, especially if we had set up a committee in a particular area and a person was made the president and a person was made the secretary. Obviously, usually the person who was best known in that area, and they would be visited. So this level of intimidation and harassment was very rampant during the 2018 election campaign in Fiji.
All right. I want to come forward to 2022, but I'll give you an opportunity. Since the elections of 2018 and just before the latest incidents of 2022, did anything else? Did you go through anything else at all?
There was 2019, and the levels of harassment, intimidation continued. Another event that sticks out is the break-in of my law firm in a new building, in a new location, in 2020. And on this occasion, they entered through the roof of the building because I was on the second floor. Once again, our office trashed, files all over the place, furniture damaged. The same thing just brings back bad memories of 2015. But the same thing happened. I reported the matter to the police. The police came, dusted the place for fingerprints. Police photographer took a lot of photos. I'm sure he's got a nice album somewhere. And again, nothing. There was not even a second call from the cops. No updates, nothing at all. But that was in 2020.
All right. Well, have a break, have a drink of water. We'll come back in a moment to discuss our further our discussions with our chief guest, Aman Ravindra-Singh. You are watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point live on Facebook and on YouTube. Our chief guest today is Mr. Aman Ravindra-Singh, Fiji human rights lawyer and an advocate for freedom of speech and freedom of expression. I note that many of you are commenting on Facebook. Thank you for that. And if we have time this afternoon, and I will make time, I'd like to put some of your questions to Aman directly. So if you are interested, send your questions. At the end, I will pick some of those questions to put to our chief guest. Now, Aman, as I said before we went to that little break, during last Sunday's SST program, you briefly mentioned a few things that occurred last month, August 2022. Can you please reiterate them for us? Because those were the triggers that led you to leave Fiji. So, what happened in August?
I'm talking about this year, August 2022, as I had
Yes.
mentioned last week, in the first week of August, this last month, it's September now. I lost three of my guard dogs. They were poisoned, and the same sort of poisoning that had occurred on the last occasion in 2017. That's exactly how it happened. The poison, whatever was used, did not just kill them instantly. It took at least 2-3 days, but that's what was the end result, and that was in the first week of August. Right after that, the beginning of second week, I got a phone call where I was threatened and basically told in no uncertain terms that my dogs had gone, and basically I will follow, and there'll be that the dogs were dead, and you would be in the same situation. And once and you are going to jail, and once the gates are shut, that's it. Your life will be over. That was in the beginning of the second week of August last month.
All right. And when you got that phone call, what went through your mind?
I was absolutely shocked. I went numb, and it was terrifying to receive a phone call of that nature. I also mentioned last week that the first time I was warned about my death was in 27 was about 3 years ago. I've also mentioned today that the first threat was in 2015, but just talking about what happened last month, I was terrified, and everything kept on pointing towards my being sentenced to go to jail. And what I was told, I could relate that. I could relate that to everything that was happening in my case at that particular time. I think about 2 days later, I went to court. That was the 9th of August. And my last attempt at having the case against me dismissed was thrown out, literally. And there was no going back at that particular point when I walked out of court on the 9th of August last month. That was it.
Is that the moment that you described last week as when the penny dropped, or when the light, that was the light bulb moment?
Absolutely. And when I walked out of court, there was in my mind I had no doubts. I had no doubt exactly where I was headed next. And everything that had been said by me in the last few years about my going to jail, was now right in front of me. At that point, I had to take stock. I had to take stock of all that had happened, all that was happening, where I was, what I was now facing, and how bleak my future looked at that point in time. Look, if I committed a crime, I will do the time. I've been a man of the law for the last 20 years. I've been a prosecutor. I've sent men and women to jail based on the evidence. Based on the evidence. Credible, sufficient evidence, whereby in a court of law a finding was made by a magistrate or judge. I've been a defense counsel. I've defended many persons. The last 7 odd years, five of the largest criminal trials I've been part of. And I've defended many persons. And I have been there when persons have been declared innocent because of the lack of evidence or breaches in procedure or denials of human rights. And here I was facing a case where, as I mentioned last week, things were fabricated and put together by Kayum and his lawyers. And I put that before the court, but the court did not agree with me. So, seriously, that was the question. Why will I go to jail? Why should I go to jail? Do I deserve to go to jail? Have I done something wrong? Have I breached the criminal code? Absolutely not. Not at all. I sat back and I thought, what wrong have I done? And everything came together. Everything came together in terms of the past threats, the harassment, the intimidation, the threat that I would be sent to jail by the regime and I would meet my death in jail. The threat from 3 years ago, the threat from the beginning of the second week of August, it all came together. And there was
Okay.
no doubt in my mind that my end was now just a matter of time. As I mentioned, I went into survival mode. I sat with the closest of my associates, and I then started to plan my way out. And that
Okay.
was it.
Now, thank you. How confident were you of getting out of Fiji before sentencing?
I was confident. When I set my mind to something, when I'm determined, I am determined to succeed. I don't take second chances. I was very confident because, as I mentioned, this is about life or death. I did not want to die. I wanted to live. I wanted to continue to fight and fight the brutal regime in Fiji. So there was no way I was going to just walk into prison with just because it was ordered against me on fabricated and trumped up evidence. I was not going to accept that. I've seen innocent men and women go to jail in Fiji. So there was no point in me going any further but to organize my departure from Fiji. And I had a plan A, I had a plan B, and I had a plan C. And
Hmm.
fortunately for me, plan A succeeded, and that plan A was taking an aeroplane out of Fiji.
And you also had plan B and C.
Yes, I did. But I think it's best that I don't speak about plan B or C because plan A succeeded. That's a story for another day. Maybe even if I write a book, maybe I'll talk about plan B and plan C. But they were all interesting plans.
All right. Now, as we discovered last week, one of the sad things of life is that you've left behind your family in Fiji. Now, have they experienced any issues with the administration or security forces since you have left?
Yes, the harassment continues. Unmarked vehicles parked in front of the home, unmarked vehicles going up and down the street. That's again a common occurrence. Tinted vehicles, that's a common occurrence, as I mentioned. But something else comes to mind. This Wednesday, I went into my internet banking with my account in Bread Bank, and I discovered that $8,700 had been taken from my account. I was alarmed, and I contacted the bank, and I was then informed that this money had been taken out by the official receiver due to the bankruptcy action against me. Again, shocked and appalled that the official receiver, the AG, have colluded with Bread Bank and stolen my money. You can't do that. You just can't do that. But they did, and you need a court order, a proper court order. You first of all, they would have had to freeze my account, and they would have had to ask me if I was going to pay an amount or not. But nothing happened, and since Wednesday, I've given Bread Bank the opportunity to furnish me with the court order. They have not been able to do that. And so I must speak about it. Whole of Thursday, whole of Friday, the bank officer came to me by Friday afternoon saying, I'm referring you to the official receiver's office. I said, do not refer me. I can contact them directly, which I had been doing. And the official receiver's office sent a long-winded explanation. But in my entire bankruptcy proceedings, they had continued to flaunt the law and not follow procedures. And again, that's very sad, but the official receiver is a simple stooge of Kayum. And this is what I'm now being put through. I was put through this harassment while in Fiji. I continue to face the same harassment while abroad. But they've stolen my money, and this is still something which I'm trying to get right. But if the bank has any common sense, they'll return my money first thing Monday morning. Otherwise, I will just have to uh, keep trying until they do follow the law and due process.
So you're saying that there were no court orders, no garnishee orders as such, and that unilaterally someone decided to clear funds from your bank account, and $8,000 odd dollars was taken out.
Absolutely correct.
Wow! And that was Bread Bank in Fiji.
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll need to follow that. Has anything else happened in terms of from the moment you've departed? Has there been any other actions taken? Any other money matters or anything like that?
Well, I've continued to receive certain threats about a few other things, but for now, I think for now things are raw. I need not discuss it for now, and maybe much more later. But for now, I'm just dealing with things. All I need to tell the viewers is I'm dealing with other issues.
All right. Now, last week you described the threat that you received by phone call, and you've discussed that again this morning, this afternoon, that you would leave prison in a body bag. Well, as you know, this made the headline in the Fiji Times on Thursday, with the Attorney General saying that, and I quote, he said, nobody who has criticized government has come out of prison in a body bag. The AG stated, and I quote again, all these years he's been living in Fiji, nobody has beaten him up or put him in a body bag. It is completely baseless to say this, and I think that it is obtuse to ask these kinds of questions. End of quote. That from the Attorney General. Aman, how do you respond to the Attorney General's statement to the Fiji Times?
Well, firstly, I think it's disappointing the Fiji Times did not ask me to comment on what he had said. Firstly, secondly, if you look at that particular response, it's all fluff. It's fluff at its best. There is no mention about all the evidence I presented in the first interview with regards to the misleading of the court, lying to the court, and all documentary evidence which showed very clearly all that wrong that was done against me. There is nothing about that. and all there is, it's all sensationalism, talking about body bags. But again, look, please understand, I did not call the AG, Sayed, I did not call him delusional for no reason. And that's the very reason I call him delusional, because this person has a very short, very, very short memory. Probably, I think his attention span maybe 10, 15 seconds. Because the reality is, all the evidence is there. And one need not be a lawyer or a trained professional to understand the difficulties that I've spoken about with regards to my case. Secondly, there have been many persons who have left prison in a body bag. The whole country knows about it. Anyone and everyone who has any interest in Fiji knows about it. It's all over the internet about the amount of persons who have, the number of persons who have been killed and who have left prison or remand or police stations in a body bag.
Okay.
So
At
whatever,
this juncture, yeah.
sorry, if I could just add, so whatever he was denying is again a complete lie on his part.
Well, at this juncture, let me state that while the Attorney General says that, and I quote again, nobody who has criticized government has come out of prison in a body bag, end of quote. Let me ask this question generally. What about those helpless victims who were taken into custody and beaten to death? Let me see if I can bring something up on the screen. And as I do, let me say to all the family members of the victims that our thoughts and prayers are with you at all times. Now, this may look very small on some screens, and on yet others, if you're watching on a big screen, you may be able to enlarge this. On the top left hand corner, this is the timeline, and these are the facts. 5th January 2007, Nimilote Verimbasanga, aged 41, died on 5th January 2007, approximately 6 hours after being taken into military custody at Nosori. Verimbasanga died of hemorrhage shock due to injuries to vital organs as a result of the beatings by military officers. Then, 23rd July 2008, escaped prisoner Joseph Mbaliloa was beaten in Suva by police and prison officers. He died from his injuries several weeks later. Reports suggest at least 6 law enforcement officers were involved in his death. November 12th, Iwane Benedito was beaten and sexually assaulted by police and military officers. A video emerged on YouTube in February 2013 showing one individual identified as Iwane Benedito being beaten and sexually assaulted, and another having a dog set upon him by police. Moving on, August 2014, Vilikesa Soko died after being beaten and sexually assaulted after his arrest as a suspect in a robbery case. And September 2016, Isaac James was taken in for questioning at Nakasi police station, detained for 2 nights in September, where, according to a family member, he was denied food and water for 2 days, beaten by police using sticks, a police belt, and a screwdriver. 24th October 2016, Ricardo Fisher claims he was beaten unconscious by police in Suva on 24th October. June 2007, Tevita Malasembe was beaten to death by police at the Valilevo police station in Suva. In 2008, 2 police officers were convicted for his murder, and 1 police officer convicted of being an accessory to crime. September 2012, 5 people were beaten on arrest at Lami after they escaped prison, where they were being held on remand. November 2015, Rajneel Singh, a witness, was assaulted on 3 separate occasions by the security forces after reporting emails found on a computer at the internet cafe he owned, apparently disclosing criminal activity. 18th October 2016, video released on social media showing three police officers beating suspects by the side of the road near Pacific Harbor. 24th January 2007, 19-year-old Sekusa Rambaka was severely beaten, sexually assaulted, and forced to do military exercises by Joint Task Force of military and police officers. He later died from his injuries at Black Rock Military Police Base in Nandi. And as we've just shared, there have been people who've been taken into custody and who have unfortunately lost their lives. And for someone in government to say nobody goes to prison and comes out in what you call it, body bags, is absolutely preposterous. So that's just a factual thing that I wanted to show. And all this happened under the watch of the current government, the Fiji First government. Aman, I've read that you've lodged a number of complaints against human rights abuses and that a parliamentary committee was set up to investigate these abuses. What can you tell us about this?
In November of 2015, after the brutal attacks on the two persons I had mentioned earlier was reported to police, the Parliamentary Foreign Affairs Committee had started an investigation under their parliamentary powers, and I was informed by an MP to make myself available to give evidence and to present evidence of torture by the security forces, the military and the police and prisons before this committee in Parliament. This is 2015 I'm talking about. As I crossed Navua and I was in time to make my 2 p.m. appointment, I received a phone call from this particular MP, and I was told that the meeting would not go ahead. And I responded that, look, I had traveled all the way and I was still on my way. I will be there by 2 p.m. What exactly was the problem? I was told that the AG had stopped the Parliamentary Foreign Affairs Committee from conducting the investigation and from even beginning the process. And I was appalled, obviously, at the AG doing this.
I think, people want proof in black and white. Let's see. There's a newspaper report, and if we can just pull that down. This, I believe, says that AG blocks committee meeting on torture. And look, folks, it's there in black and white. And that's the parliamentary committee that was stopped. And you can go and Google that, and you'll find that on Google because that's what we did as well. Now, some people are posting comments that they'd like to see an enlarged version of that timeline that I just put on screen. Well, you can get that. I will post that later on the SSTP page. But if you'd like to have a look at it in your own good time, you should search for Amnesty International Report of 2016. And that's where I'm going to now. Because in the Amnesty International 2016 report titled Beating Justice, How Fiji's Security Forces Get Away with Torture. Well, on page 5 of that report, let me quote from Prime Minister Voreqe Bainimarama's opening speech during the regional workshop on the UN Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman or Degrading Treatment or Punishment, delivered at Natandolo, Fiji on 28 October 2016. And I quote, "We have long had a culture in Fiji of people resorting to violence, whether it is against women in the home, instilling discipline in our children, or the police attempting to extract confessions from criminal suspects. The culture is what we call the Bhutaraki, the beating, is deeply ingrained in parts of the Fijian psyche." End of quote. That was from the Prime Minister of Fiji, and that was delivered at Natandolo, Fiji on 28 October 2016. The Bhutaraki culture. Aman, what do you say to the PM's statement that the Bhutaraki is deeply ingrained in the Fijian psyche.
Well, it is alarming that the Prime Minister of Fiji would stand and justify torture and the reasons as to why people are brutalized in Fiji. You cannot blame or cannot justify perhaps certain historical actions once upon a time as to that now still being the case in this point in time. That's absolutely unacceptable. And let's not make any mistake. Bainimarama is and has been and remains a strong supporter of torture and brutality, together with his uh, other dictator, Kayum. They both are strong believers and supporters of the use of torture and brutality against the citizens of Fiji. So this statement is absolutely appalling coming from the prime minister of a country. And I recall that little meeting. When they had that meeting, that was just to show the UN that they were ticking all the right boxes and making all the right noises against torture and brutality, because none of us, the real defenders of human rights, and those of us who were campaigning, I had been campaigning, I continue to, against torture and brutality, were even invited to that meeting. They had done it all hush hush. It was done somewhere, all in hidden in Singapore, I think. But that was just to tick the boxes for the UN. So unacceptable. No justification is acceptable. Even if that was a justification, what have you done since then? Nothing. Has torture stopped in Fiji? Absolutely not. So, and just one point also from the last uh, comment I had made when Kayum had stopped the Foreign Affairs Parliamentary Committee from investigating and making findings on torture. Look, again, let us not be mistaken. Let us not be fooled. You, if you had any respect for the rule of law, right, as the chief legal advisor of a country of Fiji, what would you do? You would do everything and anything to make sure there were investigations on different fronts and there were findings and people were punished and brought to justice. But in my case, everything that had happened and everything I spoke about was blocked. Now, why would you block an investigation on allegations of human rights by state security services? Why would you do that? You would only do that if you had a hand in it. And Kayum had a hand in the all the troubles against me. He was the mastermind, so he had to block it. Because if one member of the state security services, the military or the police, confessed his name, he would be in trouble. So it was in his best interest to simply block the investigation by the Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament.
All right. I again remind people that if you'd like to see that timeline for yourself, go to Google and enter Amnesty International Report 2016 Beating Justice: How
It,
Fiji's Security Forces Get Away with Torture. All right. Let me now discuss other matters with you, Aman. Matters that you may perhaps be able to shed light on. Perhaps in this segment, let us start discussing human rights issues in Fiji. We've touched on this a little while ago. You have been a human rights lawyer for years. Your Master's of Law degree was in human rights. What is the state of human rights in Fiji? Is it embraced and nurtured, or are there still grave concerns?
the state of human rights is appalling in Fiji, and it continues to take a downward trend, and it's definitely not embraced. But I will explain in a very short sentence why this is the case. Any country which is or which has suffered coups, first of all, you would notice in Fiji, since the coups of 87 and other successive coups afterwards, the respect for the rule of law, which encapsulates human rights, has continued to be weakened. And it has been watered down year after year, coup after coup. And every coup leader has come, obviously, riding on the threat of violence and torture and brutality to impose their rule upon the people. And that is absolutely what has happened in Fiji. Coup leaders have come with guns pointed at our heads, and they have expected us to bow our heads in submission. And that is what has been happening. So there is no alternative but that. And that is where we are today. The KUM and Bainimarama government, which has been in power for almost 16 odd years, have used one particular weapon against the people, which is brutality and torture, to make sure the people submit to their authority. So the state of human rights today continues to spiral downward, and it is really, really appalling. The respect for human rights is not there.
Well, you've just described the state of human rights in Fiji. This would then lead one to conclude that there is no respect for human rights. You've just said that. And why do you think that is so? That there is no respect, one, for human life, and secondly, for human rights. Why does this happen in Fiji?
As I said, and I further explain, if there was respect for human rights and for human life, then we would be a much more beautiful country. We would be a much more greater country, and there would be no need for all these draconian laws to suppress the people, to suppress the voice of the people, to suppress the thinking of the people. But because we are a dictatorship, and regardless of how you try to stretch your imagination and try to not accept my definition of where Fiji is, we are a dictatorship. And if you are still a little confused, I'd say this to qualify my statement. We are a dictatorship because there is no respect for human rights, generally and broadly speaking. If there was, then we would not be a dictatorship. You would have your right to express, you would have your right to freedom of speech, you would have your right to assemble, you would have your right to challenge, you would have your right basically to be able to seek fairness. You would have your rights as a prisoner, as a remandee, as a citizen. All these rights, where the list is endless, would be respected. And in any fair and democratic society, this is what you are able to achieve and expect out of the government of the day. And just a little point, in a democracy, the government fears the people. In a dictatorship, the people fear the government. And you know, and I know, the people fear the government in Fiji. And that
We
is a dictatorship.
will come to that subject very shortly when I will raise with you the subject of the culture of fear. I mean, Fiji was once described as the way the world should be. That's the Fiji that my generation grew up in. It was quite different. And hearing you speak with your experience on ground level of the human rights violations, of how things have eroded, just paints a very, very different picture to what we grew up in. Aman, let me now speak to you about the Constitution of the Republic of Fiji. Uh, this is like a three or fourfold question. So I'd like you to listen to the questions rather than summarizing it. Firstly, what does the 2013 Constitution mean to the people of Fiji?
The 2013 Constitution,
Yes, we can see that.
I carry my 2013 constitution with me all the time, together with my Fiji flag at the back. The constitution, the 2013 constitution is a dark blue bounded booklet, pretty much with nothingness in it. It's a blank document. What does it mean to the people of Fiji? What does it mean? Have we embraced it? Have we accepted it? Do we own it? The answer to all those questions are simply no.
Well,
This constitution,
The people of Fiji were never given an opportunity, were they, to
no,
have a voice?
we had no input. We had no input in this constitution. I remember the Yash Guy Commission set up to bring about a new constitution. I was legally consulted by Professor Guy, provided advice to Professor Guy. But this constitution was enforced upon the people, upon us, basically with a gun behind it. So it was like, here's your constitution, and do not voice any opposition to it. It was shoved down the throats of all Fijians. We have no input. We never had any input. Stakeholders were not consulted. Who drafted it? Who was behind it? No answer. We don't know. This is a mysterious constitution. It's a mystery. It remains a mystery. And so, with regards to back to your question, what does it mean? It means nothing to us. But this is a booklet which is harped on about by the regime, by Banimarama and Kayum. They go on and on about it. And unfortunately, many of our people who have not read the booklet or who do not understand the finer points contained in it are continuously fed that lie that this is a wonderful constitution. It's far from it.
Now, you'd recognize this that in some nations, the Constitution is so empowering of people's rights and freedoms that the nation strives and prospers. Having said that, let me ask you, what does the 2013 Constitution do for the people of Fiji? The first part of the question was, what does it mean to the people of Fiji? This time I'm asking you, what does the 2013 Constitution do for the people of Fiji?
This booklet, the one thing it achieves, and achieves very clearly, and continues to achieve, is that it protects the coup leaders who have conducted themselves in illegal manner, in illegal ways, carrying out coups against the country and toppling democratically elected governments. This constitution protects them. So when you celebrate Constitution Day, you're celebrating an illegal act or many illegal acts contained in this booklet, and it protects coup leaders. That's what it was able to achieve, and it continues to achieve that. This constitution promotes gun government by the gun. That is the one clear objective of this constitution.
Well, it is quite sad to note, and you've just triggered that Constitution Day is celebrated, yet Ratu Sukuna Day, for instance, has been totally removed from the list of public holidays in Fiji, etc. All right, having discussed what the Constitution does for the people of Fiji, and having heard you on that, may I please ask you if you could explain what is the status of the Constitution today?
The status of the constitution is simple. This is the one document that provides the oxygen to the Kayum government in Fiji. Everything that we complain about, everything that we continue to question, the human rights violations and everything else, the anti-democratic actions and everything else, the actions against the rule of law. Interestingly, while there are some very beautiful paragraphs and sections in here, Kayum and his clowns are not able to respect their own little constitution, the mysterious constitution. It should read actually the mysterious constitution of the Republic of Fiji, the
All right.
mystery.
I note that you said the Kayum government. It's the Bainimarama government, isn't it?
Well, only on paper.
All right. Um, Let me ask you about your views on Chapter 10 of the Constitution that deals with immunity. Now, let me also state Section 157 states that, and I quote, absolute and unconditional immunity is irrevocably granted to any person involved in the government from 5th December 2006 to the first sitting of Parliament after elections, and that would be the elections of 2014. The immunity clause cannot be reviewed, amended, altered, repealed, or revoked. Aman, your thoughts on the immunity clause?
As I had mentioned earlier, when describing what the Constitution did for the people, and now with regards to the immunity clause, which has been read out, I repeat, this Constitution protects criminals. This Constitution and that particular provision continues to protect criminals who have committed grave and serious crimes against our people, crimes against humanity, grave human rights violations, deaths and brutality and torture against our people over the period of 2006 to 2014. They are protected by this document. So if you are celebrating this document, you need to think long and hard about what exactly are you celebrating. And don't be gullible and just say this is our constitution. No, it's not. It's a booklet, basically, which should be renamed. And as I said, the mystery constitution, or the booklet that provides protection to criminals. So the question I also asked our people is quite simply, why is it that a group of people who commit serious and heinous crimes against the people, against the democracy of Fiji, given protection, and why are the little people being rushed over to jail? It can't work that way. But why does it work that way? Because there are two sets of laws for Fiji. The Kayum government and their people, they have one set of law, and we, the common people of Fiji, have another set of laws. And that's what occurs under a dictatorship.
All right, which now brings me to this point to raise the subject of the culture of fear, the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, or rather, the lack thereof in Fiji. Aman, I have had 32 previous guests on SSTP. To some degree, most of my guests have this apprehension when speaking on certain subjects. Say, for example, when questions are asked about the military, or for that matter, anything to do with the AG or the Fiji First Party, sometimes people are reluctant to openly discuss these things. Now, due to obvious reasons, as I said, free and open speech, there's a reluctance. Is there a culture of fear that you think exists in Fiji?
Yes, there is a huge culture of fear in Fiji, which is also the climate of fear. And one easy way to answer that particular question is when you look at people, or if you're discussing the government, or if you're discussing Manimarama or Keyum, and people look around them and start to whisper, and they look around, and if someone is listening and they whisper to you, that is a simple and clear example of the climate of fear. That's it. Need not read some big human rights paper on that to understand the climate of fear. So that is what occurs on a daily basis in the markets, on the streets, in public transports, in homes, at workplaces. That's the way it is. and it's a very clear-cut example of a dictatorship in full control over a people, with the use of their one weapon, which is brutality, torture, threats, and violence.
So, in that climate that people live in, that climate of fear, that culture of fear, how do people survive in such an environment?
It is a very difficult existence. It is a hostile existence. And to aid the climate of fear, one of the other common occurrences is you ask any person in Fiji, you ask any person in Fiji nowadays one particular question, and their answer would be very similar. Oh, if you say, oh, the government's silly, you just, even if the least aggressive statement you make against the government, but this is how the response will be, or this is roughly how the response will be framed. If you say, ah, the government is silly, or KUM is stupid, or anything to that extent, uh, people will look around in fear. People will start whispering. Or the other thing is, if you ask someone, what do you think if I speak out against the government, they'll say the military will take you, the police will take you, you'll be bashed, you'll be beaten. It'll be said even in the vernacular, but that's what the common theme will be. So to the listeners, is that a free and democratic society? Is that the country that we want to continue to live in? Is that the country we want to bring our kids up in? Is that the future we want to hand to the next generation? And the answer is a simply and a huge and oh no. So that is the way the climate of fear operates in Fiji, and that is how the person on the ground reacts and has accepted their fate and how they continue to live. Our people by no means are free, and our human rights are violated on a daily basis, and I've said that. And the government of the day has practiced state-sponsored torture and state-sponsored brutality against our people.
Let us now look at the fourth estate, the media. While it appears that the media these days are reporting a lot more than what they used to, many believe that there is still a sense of fear that grips the media when it comes to open and frank reporting on either political issues or breaking news that deserves to be reported. In most instances, the story does not even make it to print. What are your views on the media?
This is all part of institutional failures. And
Which we will discuss in a moment,
yes,
because I'd like to discuss institutional successes or failures with you separately, but please go ahead on the media.
noted. The media in any vibrant democratic society, or even one such as ours, where we are in the throngs of a dictatorship, have a very, very important role to play. And let me warn the media in Fiji and say this much, that by no means you are free or fair, and unfortunately there are certain news outlets which are very much controlled by Kayum and his men. And the other point is, when you look at the media and what is their role, the fourth estate in any society, it is to investigate, inform, and educate. When you pick up a topic such as democracy or human rights or the rule of law, do you seriously see anything coming out in the local media, TV, print, or internet sites about human rights, the respect for human rights, the respect for democracy, the respect for the rule of law? Nothing. Nothing. What is the media doing about it? The editors are too busy hiding under the tables. Certain media outlets are run by lawyers, and it's not about informing the people. Uh, Give me a good story which has been investigated by any local media organization and put forward. Uh, Very hard, very hard. It has happened, yes. I wouldn't say it's not happened, but it's not something that we are are always aware about. I now have noticed overseas media breaking stories of violations against the environment, against human rights in Fiji. I personally have been censored on many occasions. Not that I've asked the media for a favor, but I have taken a story and I've said, look, this is what is happening. Here are the human rights violations that I've just recorded, just received. Here are stories of corruption. Here's the evidence. And the editors have not run it. So again, that is a major failure. And are we being educated by the media? No. Are there investigations being carried out by the media? No. Are we being informed about what a free and fair and democratic society is all about? Are we even being given a glimpse of hope? It's very difficult. So many of the editors who strive day in, day out, trying to reach the greater heights and steer the ship, at least the public opinion towards a democracy, are also living in fear. And by no stretch of the imagination is the fourth estate performing at the levels that it should. Look, this is not my struggle alone. This is a struggle for all Fijians, and those who are sitting in the hot seats need to at least perform, because there is no shame or it is no crime to be pulled up by the regime, as opposed to being someone who had no spine and remained toothless during the time of our greatest needs. And history will judge us. And I'm afraid the fourth estate will definitely not have much to say if the trend continues. I know of good journalists who want to do so much, but they are stifled within their own newsrooms in Fiji.
That is indeed very, very sad to note. Now, what about the general population? Do you think that the general public also have a sense of fear? Having said that, may I put to you that perhaps social media may not suggest that, because on social media, people freely make condemnations. People seem to be able to freely express their views.
Once again, as I'd just mentioned briefly earlier on, and to continue from there, the general consensus is that people continue to live under a climate of fear in Fiji. Even so much so, I'll explain, just give you a good example. We have our own people, own Fijians living in these different countries abroad. I have had, on a few occasions, people contacting me on social media platforms and asking one particular question, which is, "Are we safe on Facebook, or will I be exposed if I talk to you?" I've had occasions where a friend has rung a third party to ask about my well-being because they were so scared to contact me directly on Facebook. So imagine these people who are sitting in the comforts of their homes abroad in free and fair and vibrant democratic countries, and still having that element of fear in their hearts and in their minds because of the brutal dictatorship that controls everything in Fiji. So that is the reality on the ground.
Okay, Aman. That same Amnesty International report that I quoted from earlier, the 2016 report, states that witnesses and lawyers also raise concerns about threats and intimidation against them, showing that the problem is not exclusively limited to abuses against persons in custody. Lawyers report that people in custody are likely to be subjected to intimidation, coercion to sign confessions, or are denied prompt access to medical treatment, family and lawyers on arrest, and are not told their rights or immediately brought to court to challenge their detention. Let me ask you, what about lawyers? Do professionals such as lawyers work in fear? Are they mindful of who they represent, etc.? Is there a fear of representation?
I think that Amnesty International report sums it up very clearly in terms of lawyers and the high levels of fear that lawyers have, and under the conditions the harsh conditions that lawyers operate under. Look, I'm a perfect example. I need not talk about anyone else. I'm a perfect example that for over 2.5 years, I continue to seek the services of a competent lawyer in Fiji. I was not able to get a particular lawyer to represent me in my own case. And I approached at least six very good and competent lawyers over time, and each of them had their little story. At least one had the audacity to say that, look, I will, if I represent you, I will, my law firm will be shut and everything else. But look, I didn't hold it against this person. One said to me that if he wanted to represent me, but he'd be deported, and he'll lose his citizenship because he'd already acquired it. Um, others would speak to me in whispers and say, "Look, I would love to represent you, but I am scared." And one lawyer had said it straight to me. He said, "Look, I'm afraid." At least I respected him for that. He said, "I'm scared, and this is it." But the reasons given were that they would be investigated, they would be audited by the tax department, they would be investigated by FICAC. Uh, their legal license may not be renewed. These sorts of reasons were given as to why they would not or could not represent me. So it was almost like I had become the plague, and you could not be close to me. But that's the reality that I faced, and that is the reality of everyday lawyers in Fiji. They are so scared to do what's right or what is necessary, and that they rather buckle under the pressure and not commit themselves to the oath that they took upon their respective holy books to uphold the rule of law. And sadly, with that mindset, we lawyers are the ones who should be standing at the forefront of the battle against injustices and against a dictatorship, against brutality and all things wrong. But lawyers in Fiji, unfortunately, continue to live and practice under a huge climate of fear, and it's ingrained now. It's very sad, but that's where we are.
Indeed, as a fellow lawyer, it is so sad to note that, as you said, that lawyers should be at the forefront of fighting injustice. But in that climate of fear, I have many friends who are lawyers in Fiji, and I guess in that climate of fear, first and foremost is their own survival, the survival for sake of their family, their own bread and butter issues, and those things take priority, I guess. We'll come back in a moment to continue our discussion with our chief guest when we'll talk of institutional failures. You are watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point live on Facebook and YouTube. Have a break, Aman, have a drink of water. Our
Thank
chief
you.
guest today is Mr. Aman Ravindra-Singh, Fiji's human rights lawyer and an advocate for freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Now, as I said a little earlier on, if you have a particular question to put to Aman Ravindra-Singh, please put them in the next 10 minutes or so on Facebook under comments, and I will see if I can address some of those with our chief guest shortly. Aman, I would now like to look at some of the Fijian institutions and get your opinion on whether they have excelled or can be deemed a failure. If they have been a success story, then why? And if not, why not? Firstly, let's begin with the Human Rights Commission. What are your views on the Human Rights Commission?
Firstly, independent institutions in any society are very important, and if we are striving to become a better or much more vibrant democratic nation, then these independent institutions are pivotal to the failure of a democracy or to the success of a democracy. In Fiji, or the so-called democracy in Fiji, I would describe more or less as a fragile, dysfunctional democracy. So, speaking about an independent organization, institution such as the Human Rights Commission, it is an institutional failure. We have not had one report against the security forces in Fiji, whereby the Human Rights Commission has come out and said that there was a blatant and cruel disregard to the person's human rights, and that all these human rights were violated. There have been many deaths in prison. There have been many deaths in remand. There have been many deaths by way of torture and brutality against Fijian citizens. But we have not come out with a clear report on any of these deaths. Now, sometimes the Human Rights Commission comes out, and it's really interesting to note. But we are all taken as fools in Sayed's dictatorship. And if there's an issue such as, let's say, someone got arrested or a group got arrested for assembling or for protesting, so what you will notice, and you can all go back and look at an incident and what came out of the Human Rights Commission, the director will come out and start preaching to us about the limits in the law. So let's say someone got arrested for assembling and protesting with a placard, then the director will come out and preach to say, this is how it is, but you needed to take out a permit. So that's why if you didn't have a permit, then you have done wrong. So there's always going to be an arrest for a violation of a particular human right. Then there will be a justification. The Human Rights Commission is unfortunately nowhere close to being an independent organization. It's run by a stooge of Qayyum, and it answers to him. Also, just to add, the same person who is the director of the Fiji Human Rights Commission is also the director of MIDA, the media organization. So if I was to go and complain against the director of if I was to go to the Human Rights Commission and complain about MIDA not taking my complaint seriously, whom exactly am I reporting to, or whom am I complaining to? The same person who's heading both organizations. So do you expect to get a fair outcome? No. So yes, institutional failure, Human Rights Commission.
Dracula being in charge of the blood bank, so to say.
Yes.
All right, so Human Rights Commission, a failure in your books. The good old Fiji police force, at one time the pride of the Pacific. These days, the police force has a number of army personnel as part of their operations. Do you think the Fiji police force is an institutional success?
It is far from an institutional success. It is, in fact, an institutional failure. But also something else I'd like to point out quickly before I explain my answer. The Commissioner of Police, this is the local media being gullible and accepting anything thrown at them by the dictatorship. The Commissioner of Police, the position is Commissioner of Police. But when you read all media and every media in Fiji, they will refer to the police commissioner as Brigadier General, blah, blah, blah. Now, hold on. That is a military rank, Brigadier General. Does the position of Brigadier General exist within the Fiji Police Force? Is there a position where a person is appointed a Brigadier General of the Fiji Police Force? Absolutely not. That is a military ranking. But the gullible local media continue to regard him as Police Commissioner, Brigadier General. So what they have done is imported his military ranking and said Police Commissioner, Brigadier General. The head of the Fiji Police Force and the position is Commissioner of Police. So it should be Commissioner of Police, Mr. X or Miss X, not Commissioner of Police. Put the military rank there. So that again is a clear example of dictatorship and how the military ranks are continually used to remind us as to where someone has come from. One. Number two, why exactly do we have a military personnel running the Fiji police force? Like, policing is a separate skill altogether. Effective policing can only come through by a person trained as a police person. And obviously, this is something that takes years to come. We don't find this in other places where military people become police commissioners, except in coup-riddled Fiji. And if you look at the history, from 87 onwards, military personnel have been heading the Fiji police force. And what has it done to the Fiji police force? It has decimated the ranks. The military personnel have not understood policing. They have brought in their own gang ho application and understanding. They have shown even more disregard and blatant and total disregard for human rights or respect for human rights. And this whole cowboy attitude has continued to plague the Fiji police force. I have worked alongside very good officers, men and women, of the Fiji police force who were dedicated to upholding the rule of law, who were patriots like us, and all they wanted was to have a proud institution. Unfortunately, we are far from that. And these failures within the Fiji police force, and I've outlined them in no particular order, is many personnel now hold senior ranks and who have not been trained or adequately skilled to occupy these roles. And one of the things was after the 2006 coup, where the senior echelon of the Fiji police force were all sent home. And what we then had was military personnel occupying these posts. Another thing which is close to my heart is domestic violence. And I tie it in with institutional failure. There's a lot of talk and lots of workshops on domestic violence in Fiji. Fiji ranks about the fourth in the world when it comes to domestic violence. And after 10, 15 years, have we seen any decline? Absolutely not. And women go complain, nothing happens. There's wide corruption within the Fiji police force. Members of the police force have been caught peddling drugs. Each month, I think at least 5 to 10 police officers get charged for assault, for beatings, for domestic violence, for corruption charges. What does that tell you? Obviously, there are major failures within the Fiji police force. Another thing of alarm is their low levels of detection. Detecting crimes has fallen to an all-time low. Many serious crimes, murders, and other serious crimes remain unsolved. What does that tell you? Does that say that the people are confident in the police force? Absolutely not. So, an institutional failure. I can go on about the Fiji police force, but I'll stop there and simply sum it up as an institutional failure.
What about the Fiji prison service? Your views on that? Institutional success story or failure?
The Fiji Prisons Services is headed by Commissioner Keane, someone who was charged for murder, later on reduced to manslaughter, and then convicted and imprisoned. So the first question is, how do you exactly have someone who is convicted for taking a life running the Fiji prison services only in a dictatorship and only in Fiji for all the wrong reasons? Again, Commissioner Keane has been caught on an audio ordering the beatings of people. Certain prison wardens have come out and, under protection, have stated that they were ordered to do wrong things. They were ordered to torture inmates. They were ordered to torture prisoners. Uh, Deaths keep occurring in the prison services, as I had mentioned last week. Brutality keeps occurring in prison services. There is strong anecdotal evidence at the levels of human rights violations in the Fiji prisons. I have personally had clients who were beaten, who were tortured, who were stomped on. I had a client who had boot marks all over his body. I've had clients who have told me about heinous crimes being committed in prisons. So it's a huge institutional failure, and it continues to be one. And the prison services is part of the dictatorship, which is an institution which is part and parcel of imposing dictatorship rule in Fiji.
Okay. In recent times, the Auditor General's office has come under fire from the government side. All things said and done, the Auditor General's office is supposed to be the watchdog of the country's purse strings. What do you say? Success story or yet another institutional failure?
Another institutional failure. The obvious position of the Auditor General is to keep in check and to account for, in a very transparent manner, all that government finances. I think 2 years ago, the Auditor General put out a report, and Qayyum came out really wild on national media. And the very next day, the Auditor General called a press conference with some of his staff, and he apologized for his findings and said that the system they used was an outdated system, which I do not believe was the true story. But what had happened, under pressure, under threats by the dictators in Fiji, the Auditor General changed his tune. Have we had any proper reports coming out from the Auditor General's report which shows discrepancies in the Fiji government's accounts in the last few years? No, there has been a stop. We were fortunate enough, but the last Auditor General who put out a report got terminated, and that was the end of it. So, with the Office of the Auditor General kept on a very tight string or tight rope and not able to perform his or her duty in accordance with the law, it is far again from being an institutional success, but is simply an institutional failure. There have been many incidents of abuse of office and of corrupt actions, which we know about is ongoing, which we know about is under investigations for years and years and years, but there is nothing coming out from the Auditor General's reports.
All right. One thing I am certain of is that the Auditor General's office has been under extreme pressure in doing its work independently in the manner in which they are supposed to be doing. Would you agree on that?
Yes, I would totally agree with that, and make no mistake that I know there are a lot of good men and women in all these institutions, not just in the Auditor General's office, but in many other institutions. And I've met people and I've spoken to many persons who want to only do the right thing, but obviously they are threatened because of loss of income, loss of work, loss of being able to put food on your table. So these are the strings that are pulled to keep people in line, or to shut people up, or to suppress them and their voices.
All right. Now, what about the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions? Has the ODPP been an institutional success story or not?
Look, I have personal interest. Well, I had personal interest once upon a time, having served in that particular office for 6 odd years, and I was very proud to have played my part in that office. This was on the back of the 2000 coup. We had done some really good work. But one thing I remember, we had really good leaders at that particular time. We were trained very well, and that was what stood the office apart. To the point that the perception in the public was that we were independent. We were not dancing to the tune of the government or to any particular person or any position holder. And with all other institutions, including the office of the DPP, it is very important that the public perception of that office be that it is independent. Unfortunately, the office of the DPP does not hold that perception within the public. Every time there is a case regarding the two dictators, either Qayyum or Bainimarama or their associates, those cases do not see the light of day. Pretty much, they go into the office and then something comes out to say, look, there is lack of evidence, or this case will not proceed to the next level, or charges will not be placed against certain persons or certain groups. So what does that do? It erodes the confidence of the public because, as I had mentioned much earlier in this interview, you can't have two sets of laws, one for the dictatorship and one for common people like you and I. And that alone sets a very wrong perception for the public. And so when the public view the office of the DPP currently, uh, the confidence is at an all-time low, as to my findings, and I'd say an institutional failure.
Okay. What about the Fiji military forces? Republic of Fiji military forces, how would you classify them as an institution? Success or failure?
I think first I'd like to acknowledge the amazing men who had led this institution prior to 1987 and the coup. The Fiji military forces was hailed, was a proud institution, and had done a lot. Our men, especially in World War II, had done a lot. Many lives had been lost for Queen country and people. That was a lot of sacrifice on the parts of our people. But all that went crashing after the first coup, which is unbelievable that it occurred with a little military. But since then, the Fiji military forces has pretty much within the frameworks of our so-called democracy, which I have stated is a fragile democracy, has become the part of the Fiji military forces now is to be the thugs for the dictatorship. Uh, every citizen knows that if you speak out against against the government of the day, against the dictators, you will be taken up to camp. Now, as a soldier, you ask yourself this question: are you proud of the fact that your workplace, your profession is referred to as the little jail or the little interrogation room for every citizen in Fiji? Would you be proud of that? No, you would not be proud of that. But that is the perception. That is what our people think of the military. And the climate of fear, again, is very, very much present when we talk about the military. Uh, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but there are good men and women serving in our military forces. Unfortunately, the themes of human rights violations, human rights breaches, unconstitutional acts, coups, terrorism, treason, sedition is all linked very, very strongly to the Fiji military forces. And that is an image I personally would like to see end very, very soon. But at the moment, an institutional failure.
All right. You led, sorry, just before that, you will probably remember that after the Mbani Marama coup, for a good period of time, there was a personal arrangement whereby Auntie Nur Bano, Mr. Qayyum's auntie, was responsible for paying the salaries of the top echelons of government, and the figures were a secret, and this happened in broad daylight. Now, what are your views of such secrecy where the public purses are being used in a private manner, monies are being expended in terms of salary or perks, and no one knows about it? I guess not even the Auditor General's office. What are your thoughts?
Yes, it's clearly linked to the Office of the Auditor General. It's again linked to the Ministry of Finance, now called Economy, but it's all in secrecy. And where does this happen? This happens in a dictatorship, and this sort of things will not ever occur in a true and truly democratic country, because there are checks and balances. There are also parliamentarians. There's a proper independent functioning parliament, but there are checks and balances within institutions which will be able to hold to account for wrongdoings. As far as I'm concerned, this was again a blatant act of abuse of office, and there will definitely be shortfalls with regards to the accounts. There will definitely be shortfalls to money being misplaced. I'm quite positive about the fact that there would have been a huge mismanagement of funds due to the lack of accountability and transparency with the whole exercise. Where does that leave us? Again, this is all shrouded in secrecy. This is again protected by this document because it all happened, and the immunity is there protecting these crooks and criminals. So this is something I would surely be wanting to see exposed in the near future when we get it right in our country, when we are a true and democratic society, and we are able to not only dig up but also hold people to account for the missing millions, as I'd like to put it.
Okay, let's move forward as we head to the future. You led the Labour Party in the 2018 elections. Currently, we have something like 10 political parties, or 11. One got deregistered just the other day. These number of political parties getting ready for general elections 2022. Do you think that with the number of political parties, there is a realistic expectation of a change of government?
I want a change in government, but to answer your question in the shortest manner, no.
Why is that?
First, you need to understand the electoral system, which was forced upon us by the Constitution. And secondly, to take on the government of the day, there is only one word that I wish to share with all opposition parties, members, and leaders, and that one word is unity.
Mhm.
Unless there is unity between all political parties, and I'm talking about genuine unity, and unless there are 55 candidates against the 55 government candidates, only then will the people of Fiji have a realistic opportunity or chance of dreaming of change at the forthcoming elections. To have multiple parties is a very, very difficult platform to stand on and hope to topple the government of the day. It is a near impossibility. Imagine 10 political parties and all votes being split against the
Yeah,
one party which is in government.
with 10 parties, of course, 55 seats, you'll have 550 people. And if you take 55 out of that for the Fiji First Party, you've got 500 competing against 55. And therein lies the massive split of votes. And therein lies the huge problem of smaller parties not getting across the threshold. Correct?
Yes, I agree with that. And to also add, look, political party leaders need to stop serving themselves, need to stop looking at their self interests, and need to openly and genuinely address one thing, which is national interest. The only question in your minds and your hearts should be what is in the best interest of our nation. And it is unity. To come together and to take on 55 members of government with 55 candidates from the opposition side. That is the only way. If you're dreaming of real change and if you're dreaming of toppling this government at the polls and being able to have a new government in place.
Aman, what does the politics of division do to the political landscape at this late stage of the game? Some are predicting that the writ of elections may be filed as early as this week. At this late stage of the game, do speeches with racial connotations help the cause of the opposition, or does it play right into the hands of the Fiji First Party?
There is no place. There is no place for the society that I am looking at, which is our society in Fiji, for racial politics. Anyone and who believes that continuing to cause racial division in their speech or in their actions and wanting to play a role at the national level or community level or regional level is out of place. We have had a history of ethnic conflict, and that is now in the past. We all need to transcend racial divides, and we all need to represent all persons. Your only question should be, am I fighting for a fellow human? Yes, that's it. Color, race, religion, creed, class, all that has no place for us And if we are still stuck on that, and I know some people are stuck on that, seriously, you need to step aside. Because for people like me and for many, many others who continue to strive for a better Fiji, who continue to play a huge part in the struggle for democracy and human rights and the rule of law in Fiji, there should be no place for any sort of racial politics in Fiji. And if we can just keep working in the interest of our nation and of our people collectively, then we are heading in the right direction. And very soon we will be able to have that country and that society that we are imagining right now.
Okay, well, with things like what we have discussed today, for example, human rights abuse, respect for human rights, the institutional failures, the culture of fear and freedom of speech and expression, or rather the lack of it, and the political divisions in the country, have these things in any way strengthened and perhaps consolidated the ruling party's grip on power in Fiji? What do you think?
Yes, while the ruling party in Fiji is the most corrupt, and in my humble view, this is the most corrupt government ever in Fiji's history, and the most brutal, and the one government which has broken the most laws and continues to be in power. What they have done very effectively is use the media. So their perception and what they put people to believe, and the perception amongst certain amounts of people out there, is that this government is not racist in any way, does not fan the flames of religious division, things like that. Anyone in the opposition who does something silly obviously aids this government to go out in the public and say, look, these guys are wrong, we are the right ones. And so that perception, the false perception that they've put out, need not be further encouraged amongst the people, to then allow the ruling government to continue to campaign on those platforms, on those issues.
All right. Well, at this juncture, let me just take a few viewers' questions. And Lela Luvu asks, what can you say about the supervisor of elections? Should there be a neutral person in charge of that office?
Look, let me sum it up this way. We are all very fired up and driven when Fiji plays sevens in the sevens series around the world. And one mistake by the referee always sees us give a lot of comments against the referee, or attack the referee. So, in terms of the elections in Fiji, let me put it this way: the government of the day have the referee, which is the supervisor of elections, in their pocket. It's very shameful to see that this person, who was never even qualified for the position, has been there and is now looking at controlling the third elections. Of course, we need an independent person, but the question I then ask is, who is independent if the dictatorship is in control? Because whoever comes into that position today or tomorrow, as long as Gayoom's in power, will obviously have to listen to him. So if we want an independent, yes, there should be an independent person. Of course, I agree with that wholeheartedly. But we can only have an independent person in that position when we have a proper government in place.
All right. A
Who,
question from, sorry,
sorry,
have you finished?
which respects democratic principles.
Okay. A question from Milika Nasilivata. Does Fiji come under the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, or does it have some sort of powers or actions to deal with situations such as yours and those that were highlighted? I have a feeling this person is talking about the Convention Against Torture, maybe, but what's your answer?
Bula to Milika. Thank you for the question. Look, while there are many, many conventions, for starters, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, which gave birth to human rights on paper, and International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, International Covenant on Social and Economic Rights, International Convention Against Torture. There are many, many conventions out there, but it's well and good that these conventions exist. However, it is the onus then comes to us, all Fijians, to make sure that there is proper respect for these conventions. Now, one thing the Kayum government has done is that they have gone and signed many conventions in the last 15 odd years, but they've only signed them, and they've informed the UN that they have signed and ratified. But that's only empty. Those are only empty words. The true implementation, the enforcement, and the respect for those conventions and the wordings have never been implemented or exercised in Fiji. I'll give you a proper example of the Convention Against Torture. When you look at the Convention Against Torture, which Fiji ratified and signed in 2016, and I commented publicly, and it's all a matter of public record, I said that those were hollow actions. Those were just to tick the boxes for the UN. Has torture stopped? Has torture been reduced? Have the security forces stopped using torture? Have there been no more prison deaths, remand deaths, police station deaths of innocent citizens? No, that has continued. In fact, it has even gotten worse. So it's one thing for us to sign and ratify UN conventions, but the government of the day, if they are not going to respect the rule of law, they're not going to respect the wordings of the convention, then it's very, very difficult to get it right. And that's what we are facing because we continue to exist under a dictatorship in Fiji.
Well explained. Now, a question from Anil Kumar. Should there be legislation enacted to apply punitive action to any Fijian who uses words and or phrases inciting divisive sentiments, phrases inter alia such as Vulangi, which has a specific meaning in the Itoke culture?
Thank you for that question. Look, in a free and democratic society, I have the right to say to you, shut up, and you have the right to tell me the same in return. I have the right to express my opinions, you have the right to express yours. Now, the laws are already in Fiji. If I say things like, let's kill all blue eyed babies, right, that is a criminal offense because I'm inciting the killing of all blue eyed babies as an example. And anyone who crosses the line and incites violence is wrong. But anyone who has the thought of calling a segment of the country Vulangis or a segment of the country dinosaurs is not committing a criminal offense. That in a free and democratic society is acceptable. You have that right, because if you don't have that right, then again we slide into a dictatorship or a quasi dictatorship. And you can go to Australia or New Zealand or the US and you can call all settlers there Vulangis or visitors, and people take it for what it's worth. I understand our history very, very well in Fiji, and some continue to call those who settled in Fiji after 1874, 14th May as Vulangis. Do I like that description? Of course, I don't like that description, but I will never say that that should be criminalized because
Mhm.
if that is going to be criminalized, then we are again in a dictatorship. There's nothing wrong with it. Unfortunately, it's the nature of people. We will always be different. We will never ever think the same or sing or like the same songs. And that's the beauty about humanity. We need to be able to say things and at the same time be able to listen to different opinions and different views. That's what is important about creating a free and democratic society and a truly vibrant Fiji. And that's my dream, and that's what I want to see.
There was a question, and I've been trying to get that on my phone, and I can't go that far back. But there was a question, I believe, what happens now to those sedition charges laid against your clients in terms of their representation? What happens to those people?
Well, it's a difficult position because no lawyer was stepping up in the last 7 years to defend the Ra chiefs, the Nandronga chiefs, and the Rambulu 45 persons. Uh, Lawyers were scared, and in fact, I had been there from day one, from the day people were being arrested and questioned. And if anything, I have a very close bond to this group, and it's beyond just legal representative and client, but there is a bond. And the trial is set for the last remaining 26 accused persons on the 1st of November. Whether I'm able to run that trial or not is something I'm not able to answer right now. But deep down inside, I really, really wish I can do that. But for now, I've had a conversation with my clients. Things are difficult at this point.
Okay, I certainly respect that. Emily Simmons asks a question. Aman, you mentioned that you've seen innocent people go to jail. Are you able to name these people or their cases if possible? Maybe just highlight what they were charged with. Well, I know for certain you can't discuss case issues, client privilege, etc. But innocent people going to jail, any highlights in that regard, Aman?
Yes, I of course can't speak about certain cases, but there are two cases I will talk about right now because it's a matter of public record. So I'm not in any way infringing confidentiality. One was the case of the Ra chiefs, the Ra 16, and the second is the case of the Nandronga chiefs, the Nandronga 16. In both instances, these persons were charged with sedition, and in the Ra cases, Ra chiefs cases, under Fiji law, if there is a document to be used, and especially if it's a photocopy, then you need to prove the authenticity of the photocopy. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of this, but in a very simple terms, I was not able to do that. I was totally blocked in the Ra chiefs case, and at the end of the day, these men and women in my eyes were innocent and they remained innocent, yet they were jailed simply on flimsy evidence and on a photocopy document. Not even like a proper one photocopy document where it went from the original to the photocopy, but this was a document or a few documents which had been photocopied multiple times, and they were still on the strength of that photocopied document sent to jail. And it's a, as I said, a matter of public record. And exactly the same thing happened with the Nandonga chiefs. At the end of the day, the case was concluded, and the finding of guilt was made against the accused persons. And again, the whole basis of the case was based on photocopied evidence, which I was not able to challenge, and I was not able to get the charges against the accused persons dismissed. I followed procedure, but unfortunately, the fact finder was someone else, and they made a decision. But as I said, under Fiji laws, there's something called the Lobendine test. I was not even allowed to apply the test in both these cases, and that for me was a massive miscarriage of justice. And that's why I said I've seen with my own eyes innocent men, innocent women go to jail.
Okay. Our very own Nikhil Singh asks you a question. He says, Aman, you shared your views on some of the institutions in Fiji. What is your view on the Fiji Law Society? Has it now become toothless?
Well, I do not wish to directly or indirectly criticize members of the fraternity, but I'll just put it this way: if your house was on fire, uh, don't expect the law society to bring or arrive in the first truck with water.
Okay.
The law society needs to get back to basics, and that is to stand up for the rule of law and to take direct action and not just issue press statements.
All right. I'm just, I think we've come to the end of questions as far as I can go. Well, Aman, as we head to the finishing line, what are your dreams for Fiji?
Thank you. My dreams are very simple and achievable. I look forward to the day that we have a free and democratic society. And if you're asking, what do you mean? All these institutional failures that I've described, these institutions need to start working in accordance with democratic principles. The dictatorship must be toppled by all legal means in Fiji, and we must have a government for the people, by the people, from the people in all aspects of what democracy means. Our people need not live in fear. Our people must be able to achieve and live to their fullest potential. We need to just get it right. We have a beautiful country, and the last 15, 16 odd years has just been nothing but a group of people there who have consolidated their power through unlawful means with guns, and then put this document out there as their little Bible, under which they protect themselves and continue to enjoy the benefits of everything that they are in control of, together with their uh, supporters and sympathizers. So my dream is for Fiji to once again get back on track, to respect and human rights, but not only respect, but to become a world leader in the respect of human rights, to be a world leader uh, in terms of a democratic society, to be a world leader to show that we have the greatest respect for the rule of law. So that is what my dreams are about Fiji, and we will achieve it. Have no doubt about that. As long as we continue to strive and strive each day towards a better tomorrow, we will do it. Those who know me know my commitment, know my passion, know my dedication to my country. And in fact, with this latest incident, I am only further encouraged. My resolve is further strengthened. I am much more determined, and I continue on the same path. Just because I am physically not in Fiji at the moment does not mean I will slow down. I will not slow down. In fact, I will work even harder, and that's the important thing. And I look forward to making a return to Fiji. Whether I return by plane or boat is to be seen. Will be seen on the day. But I'm going to go back. And just a warning to Kayum and Bainimarama. You both have done a lot of damage to our people. You have done a lot of damage to our nation. And seriously, it cannot go on. History shows every dictatorship has a sad ending, has a brutal ending. So it's on your terms now, but the tide will turn. And how that ending takes place, I can't predict it. But just look at history, and the answers are there. The people will succeed, we will succeed, and we will get there. And we will then go on to build a greater Fiji. That is my dream.
Well said. In fact, as you say, history has proven time and time and time again that nothing beats people power when people merge together with one common identity, with one common purpose for the good of mankind. Well, I asked you for your dreams. Now, what do you envision Fiji to be in the very near to medium future?
In the very near or medium future, the way I see things, since every second person is pitting all to get right or be right in the upcoming polls, All attention is right now focused towards the elections. As I'd mentioned earlier, if we are not united, the outcome will be the same, and that will not make us happy. Again, that will mean another 4 years of this stupidity and dictatorship. So, short term and immediate, I think everything depends on the elections and then beyond. Now, if the elections goes the same way and the same parties returned, then again, what happens? We again, a lot of people will start focusing towards the next 4 years, 2026. But I don't think we should be drumming up and singing the tune of democracy, rule of law, and human rights every 4 years. You shouldn't do that. You need to stop. Freedom is like oxygen. It's the air you and I are breathing right now. That's freedom. Unfortunately, a lot of our people have no value for freedom, have no respect for freedom because you wake up every day, you go about your chores, you go to sleep because you're breathing. And that's what freedom is, it's oxygen. But if I place a plastic bag over your head, place it over your head and start to pull it a little, you will start running out of oxygen. That, in my very humble view, is exactly what is happening to us as a nation and as a people today in Fiji. You have a plastic bag over your head, it's full, but there's a little gap somewhere there, so you're able to breathe, but you're not breathing freely. You're struggling. We are all struggling. So we can't keep putting all our focus and hope on elections and elections and elections. It can't happen. And we can't put all our hopes on politicians. We need to take our future into our own hands. That's important. So if you and I and everyone else can start talking about freedom, wanting to breathe freely, and wanting to have respect and dignity as human beings, and wanting the highest regard for human rights and respect for human rights, the rule of law and democracy in our country, then we need to start agitating. Now, I'm not saying rush to the streets and start protesting, but agitate. Free yourself from being a slave in your own mind and in your own heart. Accept the fact that you're not doing wrong, but all you're asking for is to take what is ours as a birthright, as a God given right, and that is to live as a people who are free, who wish to live in a free and democratic society and not in a dictatorship. So that's how we need to look at it. Short term, elections. Medium term, elections. If it goes our way, great. If it doesn't go our way, we need to agitate and use every legal means, every lawful means to get it right. But until and unless there's a voice, there's a chorus, and people are singing the tunes and words of freedom, we will continue to go round and round and round in circles. And I can bet you 2026 will be the same conversation.
All right. Just before I ask you to conclude today's session, Aman, one of your old boys from school, Seru Aminisitai, is in South Sudan. And when this program started, it was 2 a.m. there. I was sent a message to particularly mention him that he was watching, although it was 2 a.m. in South Sudan, he was watching the program because you were on it. Any shout out to some of your supporters, some of your friends?
Big bulla to Seru, someone I've known from childhood, and also big Vinaka Wakalevu and Antane and a huge thank you to each and every person again out there. I am overwhelmed by your support, your thoughts, your checking on me, your words of encouragement through emails, Facebook, text messages, and other social media platforms. I can't thank you enough. Please accept this as a thank you from myself and for everyone who has continued to be part of the team. Obviously, I can't name you, but you know who you are. And again, a big thank you. Let us continue this momentum. Let us not uh, fall to the wayside. Let us continue this momentum. Let us continue this conversation. As long as we are able to continue this conversation, as long as we are on the right path, we cannot be moved. And all I'm asking is that we continue this conversation. I am again thankful to the groups out there in Australia, in New Zealand, in America, uh, Canada, UK, and many other nations. Last week I had a little contact from a group of our people from Jerusalem. Shalom to you. You know who you are. But it's been amazing. Uh, I've had this chance in the last few weeks to talk to many of you. So thank you, and I look forward to your continued support. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to all of us being part of the solution. And I just want to say, just because I'm out of harm's way temporarily does not mean that I'm going to slow down. While I'm happy not to be facing direct harm right now, I am not a happy person because my country is not free, my people are not free. And until we are free, then only will I have that happiness in my heart.
Well said. And a number of people have expressed their concerns about your family, their welfare. What is your message to family and friends who have been concerned about, firstly, your safety and welfare, and then the safety of your family, your immediate family?
Again, thank you for the concerns. And some of you have contacted me and offered support also. Huge thank you to all of you, each and every one of you. Look, it is what it is. Never was it my understanding that to fight for our freedom, to fight for democracy, to fight for the human rights of each and every individual back home, and for the rule of law going to be a walk in the park. Many of you over the years uh, advised me, cautioned me, warned me, and with some of you I had little tips, little arguments, because I would say I will not stop. But I think you know where I was coming from, and I think there's been a huge awakening and a lot more understanding amongst people. But this is what I do, and this is who I am. Nothing's going to change. This is how I was brought up, and these were the principles imparted to me by my late father. And this is what it is going to be. And I have also said openly at certain meetings in Fiji that until my last breath, I will fight the regime back home, and I will not slow down. So, come what may, this is my fate, and we will see the end result sooner or later. But thank you again for your concerns. I can't discuss family back home for certain reasons due to security and everything else surrounding them, but everyone's trying their best and everyone's pulling together. Thank you.
All right. And where did you learn to talk so well? Did you have a good mentor when you were growing up?
Yes, yes. I had a brother who was a very amazing journalist, and I looked up to him all the time, and never expected to be on his program.
All right, Aman, my final question to you is you've taken part in two programs on Sashi Singh's Talking Point. Any comments about SSTP?
When this program started, I admired the program, but for certain reasons, I would not have ever appeared in this program.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the circumstances changed, and my circumstances changed dramatically. And it just so happened that I actually had a little opportunity to come on the show. I'm thankful for the show because, as opposed to mainstream media, who would have said my story in probably 2 minutes and cut all the good parts because the editors would not have allowed anything, I've had this platform to explain in great detail all that happened to me, all that has happened to me, and my thoughts and views on why we are currently in the thrones of a dictatorship in Fiji and how we can step away from that. I hope that my little discussion has been beneficial to many and maybe explained a bit more. I'm always happy to engage in further conversations. I have a lot to say just on this. Probably we can speak about this booklet for a few hours. There are many things. If you get me started on human rights and human rights violations, there's so much. There's so much to talk about, things that I've gone through, but I've tried to encapsulate it in a tiny form. But I'm thankful to the program in a huge way for getting my story across. Now, whatever happens next really doesn't matter to me because I've had this opportunity. And I just want to get back to fighting the regime and continuing to be the biggest thorn on the side of the regime until we have overcome.
Aman Ravindra-Singh, very, very big thank you to you. Big Vinakabaka Levu. Dhanavad for being chief guest in Sashi Singh's Talking Point last Sunday and today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you as chief guest today. And I thank you for discussing some very, very hard subjects that are so personal to your particular case. So thank you once again. And I know times are a little tough, but we Sing boys, we hang together, we are strong, as you say, as the old Don taught us to be. Well, happy Father's Day and enjoy your day. Stay well, stay blessed, and may your God go with you. And
Thank you very much.
at the end, I have a little surprise for you. So we'll talk to you later. But once again, Aman, thank you very much. And here's wishing you a very blessed Sunday and happy Father's Day.
Thank you very much, Shashi. Thank you very much for having me on the
You're welcome.
program. And thank you very much to everyone. And a happy Father's Day to each and every individual out there.
All right, now let me remind you, our viewers, that I will shortly announce next week's chief guest. And however, I will now take a moment to wish all our fathers a very happy Father's Day. Let me dedicate this Happy Father's Day verse by Audrey Ray to all the deads. It's called Happy Father's Day. Some of us have dads we cannot do without. Some of us have dads who bawl and scream and shout. Some of us have dads who left when we were young. Some of us have dads with whom you need to hold your tongue. Some of us have dads who never even call. Some of us have dads who are never there at all. Some of us had dads who have sadly passed away. Whichever one you have, wish him Happy Father's Day. To all dads viewing this episode of Sashi Singh's Talking Point, Happy Father's Day to you. Enjoy this special day in your honor with your loved ones. And I would add that whatever you do, please do not drink and abuse your family on such an auspicious day. Give them all the love you can. Embrace your children. Love them while you can. Well, I thank all those viewers who've taken time to provide their positive feedback with regards to this program. SSTP, we ask the questions that Fijians all over the world want answers to. Fijians want to know. That's it for episode 34 of Sashi Singh's Talking Point. A big thank you to my regular contributor, Nikhil Singh, for his input in the program today. To my SSTP team, thank you very much, as always, for all the hard work you put into it. And to you, our valued viewers, thank you very much for being part of this program today. Now it's time to announce the chief guest for next week. Who's going to be the chief guest next week? My chief guest for next Sunday will be former banker and People's Alliance Party provisional candidate, Mr. Cecil Brown. That is right, next week we meet Mr. Cecil Brown as chief guest in episode 35. So that's something to really look forward to. And as I say goodbye to you, let me say goodbye on this Father's Day. This is for you, my little brother. Take care and God bless you. So until the next episode, I wish you all a safe and very happy week. In closing, I'll leave you with this quote from Jimmy Dean. I can't change the direction of the wind, but I can adjust my sails to always reach my destination. I can't change the direction of the wind, but I can adjust my sails to always reach my destination. That quote from Jimmy Dean. Well, that's it for episode 34 of Sashi Singh's Talking Point. Till the next program, I am Sashi Singh, bidding you goodbye, namaste, and nisamo.